Mr. Chairman, I wanted to start with something you talked about early in your testimony, endangered species list, recovery and delisting. You know, the greater Yellowstone ecosystem population of grizzly bears.
Yes, sir.
Fully recovered for 20 years. I understand why they went on the list initially, down to 100, now well over 1,000, spread way beyond the area that people were hoping they would stay, and that we knew that they were not going to stay as they continued to grow. Grizzly bears are still listed as threatened under the ESA. Number of bears far greater than the number required for delisting by the Fish and Wildlife Service.
Yes, sir.
Wyoming has played an important role as a state in leading this recovery. So as Assistant Secretary, you'll have the authority over Fish and Wildlife Services. When can we expect the service to delist the grizzly bear?
Thank you so much for this great question. And if Mr. Daines joins us later, I think we'll get it again. It's such a good one. So first of all, let me agree with you, Senator Barrasso, and congratulate Wyoming and everyone who's been working on bears for all these years, that the Greater Yellowstone Ecosystem Recovery Management Area population has met its recovery criteria. You are absolutely right. It's met and exceeded its recovery criteria, and that's fantastic news. And it's not just Greater Yellowstone, by the way. It's also Northern Continental Divide has met its recovery criteria too. So what does that tell us? It tells us bears are doing really well in important parts, and particularly in Wyoming and Montana. There is a petition before us. Wyoming has petitioned us to delist the Greater Yellowstone. They've asked us to find the population a distinct population segment, and so that is the sort of arcane part of the law that we're trying to work through. Congress has asked us to use that designation sparingly, and so, and we're also looking at our delisting criteria. So what I would say to you, Senator, is that with the ESA, it's the question is delist, list. It's also the path you take to get to that decision matters when it comes to whether or not a court will overturn it or not, or sustain it. And so it's really the path that we're working through, the path that Wyoming has asked us to follow. So I appreciate the question. And what I want to say to you is, regardless of the outcome of my nomination, I will continue to work with Wyoming on that particular issue.
Great. So in August of last year, the BLM issued a draft resource management plan for the Rock Springs field office. This plan would block, severely restrict access to over 3.5 million acres of federal land in southwest Wyoming. If finalized, the plan would devastate the livelihoods of the people and the communities in my state. The governor, the congressional delegation, state legislature, county commissioners, across the board, everyone strongly opposes what the Secretary has come out with. So far, the Department has done little to address any of our concerns. If confirmed, what would you do differently?
Yeah, so thank you, Senator. So you're right, it's a BLM RMP process, and I'm not involved in those processes, but I am very much aware of Rock Springs. I'm very much aware of the concern in Wyoming and the engagement in Wyoming and how important it is as a plan. It covers quite a large area. You're absolutely right. I also understand and am very grateful, just on behalf of the department, for the incredibly constructive input that folks in Wyoming have provided. In particular, particularly grateful to the governor for his leadership in really facilitating that input. I have heard both the Secretary and the BLM Director say to this committee that when the final plan comes out, that we expect that input to be reflected in that final plan. If I'm confirmed, Senator, depending on where the plan is, I would welcome, if you think it's important, and if I'm invited to come to Wyoming and talk to folks about how they're feeling about the plan.
Well, we'd love to have you. Well, final question. So in May, the Bureau of Land Management took steps to prohibit coal leasing in the Powder River Basin. Last year, the Powder River Basin, about 45% of all the coal mined and used in the United States. Ms. Stone Manning has said that existing leases will be able to meet our coal demand in the future. I doubt that. She's capable of assessing our future coal demand. I don't think she's capable of doing an objective decision on this. Where do you stand on future leasing?
So thank you, Senator. So yes, I'm familiar with Powder River Basin, growing increasingly familiar, and in preparation for this committee hearing. And yes, coal, even as demand for coal falls, it is still part of the energy mix, particularly almost exclusively in the important sector of electricity generation, and I understand that. If I'm confirmed as Deputy Secretary, I would seek to understand at the appropriate level, at the deepest level, this argument about sort of you know,
That's the
unused leases.
question, you
and-
know, should the department end new leasing in the Powder River Basin? That's
Right,
the
and-
fundamental question.
Yeah, well, so, you know, I think if I'm confirmed, I'd need to understand the issue better, Senator, particularly as it relates to the debate you've just said, which is we have a lot of capacity in existing leases, and whether or not, you know, we believe that that existing capacity is adequate. You disagree, I would, as a deputy secretary, I would come to understand that debate better.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.